Today we confront an event that is shaking the foundations of global security and redefining the nature of modern warfare. Reports have emerged of Russia deploying a hypersonic strike against Ukraine, a weapon of unprecedented speed and destructive potential. Hypersonic missiles, capable of traveling at more than 5 times the speed of sound, render traditional defense systems nearly obsolete. This is not just another headline, this is a strategic game changer. And as these weapons streak across the skies, we must ask ourselves, what does this mean for Ukraine, for Europe, and for the fragile balance of world peace? President Zelensky's reaction, measured yet resolute, underscores the gravity of the situation. On one hand, we see a nation under pressure, grappling with the immediacy of a technological threat that can bypass conventional defenses. On the other hand, there is a demonstration of leadership, a refusal to succumb to fear, and a determination to rally international support. The tension between these forces, the destructive power of technology and the resilience of human resolve, defines the contemporary battlefield in ways that were unimaginable even a decade ago. The deployment of hypersonic missiles by Russia marks a turning point, not only in the Ukraine conflict, but in the very nature of modern warfare. Imagine a projectile moving faster than 5 times the speed of sound, slicing through the sky with precision that renders conventional defense systems nearly irrelevant. The sheer velocity and maneuverability of these weapons mean that traditional missile shields, radar intercepts, and early warning protocols face unprecedented challenges. Every report of a hypersonic launch sends a ripple of anxiety through military analysts and defense strategists worldwide, because the rules of engagement that nations have relied upon for decades are suddenly outdated. This is not a mere escalation of firepower, it is a fundamental transformation in the calculus of military strategy. How does a nation respond when an adversary can strike with near impunity, leaving minimal time to react? The strategic implications are staggering. Hypersonic technology compresses decision-making windows to a matter of minutes or even seconds. For Ukraine, a country already under severe pressure, this means that defensive planning must account for threats that move faster than human reflexes and conventional response mechanisms. Governments around the world are forced to consider the terrifying scenario in which a single hypersonic strike could target critical infrastructure, command centers, or population hubs before any meaningful interception is possible. The psychological impact is equally significant. The knowledge that a weapon exists which can bypass all defenses introduces a new layer of vulnerability and tension, affecting not just military planning but civilian morale and political stability. Russia's decision to utilize this technology now is not coincidental. It demonstrates an understanding that power in the 21st century is increasingly measured not by sheer numbers of troops, but by technological capability and strategic leverage. Hypersonic strikes symbolize more than destruction. They convey dominance, mastery of advanced military science, and the ability to project influence without traditional confrontation. When such a weapon is deployed, the world takes notice. International actors are forced to reassess alliances, defense spending, and the balance of power in real time. The specter of a hypersonic threat forces governments to consider previously theoretical scenarios as immediate strategic realities. Moreover, the operational complexity of hypersonic weapons adds a new dimension to global military calculations. Unlike ballistic missiles, which follow predictable trajectories, hypersonic projectiles can maneuver mid-flight, evade interception, and adapt to changing circumstances. This means that even the most sophisticated radar and missile defense networks are now operating at a disadvantage. Analysts are scrambling to understand how to detect, track, and counter these new threats, and the answers are neither simple nor inexpensive. Nations must invest in next-generation technologies, artificial intelligence for rapid decision-making, and adaptive defense strategies capable of responding in seconds rather than minutes. The broader geopolitical consequences are equally profound. The deployment of hypersonic missiles sends a message beyond the immediate battlefield. It signals to allies, adversaries, and neutral parties that Russia possesses a tool capable of shifting strategic calculations in its favor. The strike is a statement of capability and intent designed to test the responses of Ukraine and its international supporters. It is a demonstration of what military theorists call deterrence through technology, where the mere existence of a weapon reshapes the behavior of rivals. For observers and policymakers, the lesson is clear. The future of warfare has entered a phase defined by speed, precision, and technological innovation. Hypersonic weapons are not a distant possibility, they are an immediate reality, altering the strategic landscape in ways that demand urgent analysis, preparedness, and adaptation. Each launch reminds the world that power is no longer measured solely by the size of armies or the number of tanks, but by the ability to harness advanced technology to achieve decisive, rapid, and often unpredictable effects. The hypersonic strike in Ukraine is not merely a headline, it is a wake-up call to the global community, a stark illustration of how warfare has evolved and the stakes involved for nations confronting this new reality. President Zelensky's response to Russia's hypersonic strike is a masterclass in leadership under extreme pressure, a demonstration of strategic poise in the face of unprecedented danger. When a nation faces a threat that can bypass every traditional defense, the natural impulse may be panic, retreat, or a scramble to react. Yet Zelensky has consistently chosen a path that combines resolve, visibility, and international diplomacy, signaling to both his citizens and the global community that Ukraine will not succumb to fear. Imagine the weight of that decision. Every public address, every meeting with foreign leaders, every military briefing carries with it the knowledge that the world is watching, that the stakes are existential, and that the margin for error has shrunk to near zero. This is leadership at the cutting edge of modern conflict, where political acumen must match technological awareness. The importance of perception cannot be overstated. Zelensky understands that leadership in the 21st century is as much about controlling the narrative as it is about controlling the battlefield. By projecting calm, determination, and strategic foresight, he strengthens internal morale, reassures allies, and complicates the calculations of adversaries. This is not merely political theater, it is a crucial element of survival. When the enemy believes that their hypersonic strike has sown chaos or fear, Zelensky's measured response undermines that psychological advantage. Each public statement, each measured reaction, becomes part of a broader strategy that leverages communication as a tool of defense. Moreover, Zelensky's approach highlights the interplay between national leadership and international support. In the face of technologically advanced threats, no nation can operate in isolation. By engaging global partners, emphasizing the existential stakes, and articulating Ukraine's position clearly, Zelensky transforms the hypersonic strike from a purely military event into a diplomatic catalyst. International alliances are strengthened, aid is mobilized, and the world is reminded of the strategic significance of Ukraine beyond the immediate theater of conflict. In this sense, Zelensky's leadership is a blend of wartime command and geopolitical negotiation, demonstrating that modern leaders must navigate multiple arenas simultaneously. The speed and lethality of hypersonic weapons add urgency to every decision, forcing leaders to act with precision and clarity. A single misstep, a delayed response, or a public display of uncertainty could embolden adversaries and exacerbate vulnerability. Zelensky's repeated emphasis on resilience, transparency, and proactive engagement serves as a counterbalance to the chaos introduced by this new form of warfare. It illustrates a critical lesson for political and military strategists alike. Technology may define the tools of conflict, but human leadership defines the response. A nation's capacity to adapt, communicate, and mobilize under pressure becomes as decisive as the weapons arrayed against it. Furthermore, Zelensky's actions illuminate the psychological dimension of modern conflict. The threat of hypersonic strikes is not only physical but existential, capable of undermining public confidence and eroding trust in institutions. By appearing composed, informed, and resolute, Zelensky mitigates the potential for panic and maintains the social cohesion necessary for sustained resistance. In this context, leadership becomes both a shield and a signal, a method of absorbing the shock of advanced weaponry while communicating strength to allies and adversaries alike. Finally, Zelensky's leadership exemplifies the convergence of courage and calculation. Each decision reflects a careful balance between immediate safety and long-term strategy, between demonstrating defiance and seeking constructive engagement with the international community. In the era of hypersonic warfare, the capacity to lead with intelligence, empathy, and strategic foresight becomes indispensable. The president's response demonstrates that even when facing weapons that can alter the battlefield in seconds, human judgment, resolve, and vision remain irreplaceable forces shaping the outcome of history. The hypersonic strike against Ukraine forces NATO and European security frameworks into a moment of intense reevaluation. Modern defense alliances were built around predictable threats, layered detection systems, and the assumption that time and coordination could neutralize attacks before catastrophic consequences occurred. Hypersonic weapons, with their extreme speed and maneuverability, challenge every one of these assumptions. NATO planners now confront a reality where reaction windows shrink to minutes or even seconds, where conventional missile defense systems may be ineffective, and where strategic certainty is replaced by calculated risk. The strike underscores a sobering truth. Europe's traditional security architecture was never designed to cope with weapons that combine near instantaneous travel with unprecedented precision. This challenge is not merely technical, it is strategic, psychological, and political. NATO is forced to consider not only how to intercept these weapons, but also how to maintain cohesion among member states under the pressure of rapid escalation. The alliance's core principle, collective defense, must now be interpreted in the context of threats that can strike with minimal warning. Each member state faces questions about national preparedness, resource allocation, and the speed at which intelligence must be processed. Hypersonic strikes demand not just upgraded radar and interceptor technologies, but also a transformation in decision-making processes, command hierarchies, and crisis communication. The very concept of deterrence is being redefined. European security is also being reshaped by the political implications of these technological advancements. A single hypersonic strike, or even the demonstration of such capability, can influence the behavior of states far beyond Ukraine. Allies must reconsider military spending, reassess defense priorities, and weigh the risks of escalation against the imperatives of solidarity. Governments are confronted with a dilemma: how to project confidence to their populations while simultaneously acknowledging the unprecedented danger posed by weapons that defy traditional containment. Public perception, often as crucial as military capability, becomes a strategic variable in itself. Furthermore, NATO's response mechanisms are being tested not just in theory but in practice. The alliance must coordinate intelligence sharing, optimize early warning protocols, and ensure interoperability of advanced defense systems across multiple nations. Hypersonic threats amplify the consequences of any delay or miscommunication, making diplomatic coordination as essential as technological readiness. Every decision to mobilize, every choice of alert level, carries political and military weight, influencing not only immediate outcomes but the long-term credibility of the alliance. The strike also serves as a wake-up call for investment in next-generation defenses. European nations, long reliant on conventional missile defense networks, are now evaluating research into hyper-velocity interceptors, AI-driven threat assessment systems, and integrated command platforms that can respond in real time. These are not incremental changes, they are systemic shifts in how security is conceived, executed, and sustained. The hypersonic challenge accelerates timelines, forces innovation, and compels governments to reconcile budgetary constraints with existential imperatives. Hypersonic capabilities also provoke a broader discussion about the very nature of deterrence. When a weapon can bypass established defenses, the balance of power shifts, and traditional notions of mutual assured defense are undermined. NATO must ask difficult questions. Can the alliance credibly deter an adversary armed with hypersonic technology? How can escalation be managed without triggering a catastrophic response? The answers are neither simple nor immediate, yet the urgency is undeniable. Ultimately, the deployment of hypersonic missiles against Ukraine illuminates the fragility of European security in the face of rapid technological evolution. It exposes gaps in planning, coordination, and preparedness while simultaneously compelling innovation, strategic foresight, and deeper political engagement. For NATO and European leaders, the challenge is clear: adapt or risk obsolescence in a world where speed, precision, and technological sophistication define the parameters of survival. The hypersonic strike is not just a military event, it is a profound catalyst reshaping defense strategy, alliance dynamics, and the perception of security across the continent. The hypersonic strike is not only a military maneuver, but a deliberate geopolitical signal, a display of power intended to reverberate far beyond Ukraine's borders. Russia's decision to deploy these weapons at this moment communicates a clear message: technological supremacy translates into strategic leverage, and the capacity to strike with near, immediate effect reshapes the balance of influence in Eastern Europe. This is not merely about hitting a target, it is about asserting dominance in a way that forces allies, adversaries, and neutral observers alike to reconsider assumptions about capability and intent. The act itself becomes a statement of authority, an exhibition of strength that seeks to redefine the rules of engagement on the global stage. Observers note that the psychological dimension of this demonstration is profound. By showcasing hypersonic capabilities, Russia compels the world to confront the reality that modern warfare is no longer constrained by traditional defenses or conventional timing. The strategic impact is magnified by the unpredictability and speed of these weapons. When leaders witness a projectile that can maneuver mid-flight and evade interception, it undermines confidence in established deterrence. The message is unmistakable: the old calculations of military power are being rewritten, and those who fail to adapt risk strategic irrelevance. Russia's deployment also serves a tactical purpose beyond intimidation. It tests the responses of NATO, the United States, and other international actors, probing weaknesses in communication, coordination, and readiness. Each reaction, or lack thereof, provides valuable information, shaping future strategy and signaling to Moscow how far it can push the boundaries without triggering catastrophic escalation. In this sense, the strike operates on multiple levels: immediate destruction, strategic testing, and long-term signaling, all of which amplify its geopolitical significance. The choice of timing further enhances the strategic message. By launching hypersonic strikes amid heightened tension, Russia communicates that it possesses both capability and resolve. This is not a hypothetical threat. It is an operational demonstration intended to influence decision-making at the highest levels. Global actors are forced to recalibrate risk assessments, re-examine military readiness, and reconsider the assumptions underlying diplomatic postures. The ripple effects extend far beyond the battlefield, shaping economic, political, and security calculations across multiple continents. The international response is itself a measure of the strike's strategic impact. Allies of Ukraine are compelled to accelerate discussions on defense modernization, intelligence sharing, and coordination of military resources. Neutral parties reassess their position, weighing the potential costs of alignment against the dangers of inaction. Every statement, briefing, and diplomatic intervention is filtered through the lens of this technological assertion, highlighting the interplay between military action and global perception. Russia's display of hypersonic power becomes a tool of influence, capable of shaping not only the immediate conflict, but the broader geopolitical environment in which it unfolds. Moreover, the strike exemplifies the growing intersection of technology and strategy in modern conflict. Hypersonic weapons are not merely advanced missiles, they are instruments of strategic messaging. Their deployment signals that warfare is increasingly about the capacity to project power with precision, speed, and unpredictability. Leaders must now consider not just what weapons can do on the battlefield, but how their use communicates intent, shapes perception, and alters the behavior of allies and adversaries. Each launch becomes a chapter in a broader narrative of power projection, where the demonstration of capability can be as influential as the destruction itself. Finally, the strategic messaging inherent in the hypersonic strike underscores a larger truth about the 21st century. Balance of power. Influence is inseparable from technology. A nation capable of executing rapid, precise, and psychologically resonant strikes wields leverage far beyond its immediate military footprint. Russia's action in Ukraine is a stark illustration of this reality, compelling policymakers, military strategists, and global citizens to confront the complex interplay between innovation, intent, and international response. In every respect, the strike communicates a new paradigm that power is now as much about speed, precision, and perception as it is about territory or manpower. The deployment of hypersonic missiles highlights a broader, more concerning trend. The modern arms race is increasingly defined by speed, precision, and technological sophistication rather than sheer numbers of troops or traditional weaponry. Nations around the world are witnessing a paradigm shift where military dominance is no longer determined solely by tanks, artillery, or aircraft, but by the ability to innovate and deploy weapons that can outpace conventional defenses. Hypersonic technology epitomizes this shift. It compresses time, undermines established defense systems, and challenges long-held doctrines of deterrence. As these weapons emerge from laboratories into active battlefields, they force policymakers and military planners to reconsider fundamental assumptions about strategy and security. The pace at which this technology has evolved is itself a source of concern. Hypersonic weapons, once theoretical, are now operational tools capable of altering the balance of power almost instantaneously. Their speed and maneuverability are unmatched, and the window for response is drastically reduced. For countries observing this evolution, the implications are profound. Traditional missile shields, radar systems, and early warning networks are no longer sufficient, creating an urgent imperative to invest in next-generation defenses. The arms race has become not just about acquisition, but about rapid adaptation, research, and development, with nations competing to create systems capable of countering threats that were unimaginable a decade ago. This technological acceleration intensifies global instability. As each state develops hypersonic capabilities, others feel compelled to respond, triggering a feedback loop that escalates the race in both speed and sophistication. The pursuit of strategic parity becomes urgent, with nations forced to allocate massive resources to develop, test, and deploy countermeasures. The risk is not limited to battlefield encounters. It extends into diplomacy, international relations, and the potential for miscalculation. One misinterpreted launch, one technical malfunction, or one intelligence error could spark escalation with catastrophic consequences. Hypersonic weapons thus redefine risk calculus, forcing leaders to weigh rapid technological advancements against the heightened stakes of unintended conflict. Moreover, the arms race surrounding hypersonic technology emphasizes the centrality of innovation in contemporary military strategy. Nations capable of integrating artificial intelligence, advanced propulsion systems, and real-time data analytics gain disproportionate advantage, potentially reshaping regional and global hierarchies of power. Technology becomes both a shield and a sword. It offers defensive capabilities while simultaneously enabling offensive precision strikes that can destabilize opponents. The interplay between innovation and strategy is a defining characteristic of modern conflict, and hypersonic weapons exemplify this dynamic in stark terms. The global perception of security is also being transformed. Citizens, analysts, and policymakers are confronted with the reality that traditional concepts of deterrence are evolving. The mere existence of hypersonic weapons acts as a strategic signal, a form of psychological leverage that extends beyond their immediate destructive potential. Nations must now consider how public perception, allied confidence, and adversary calculation are influenced not only by the weapons themselves, but by the knowledge of their existence and capability. The modern arms race, therefore, is as much about perception and influence as it is about physical destruction. Finally, the emergence of hypersonic weapons underscores a broader challenge, balancing innovation with responsibility. While technological advancement can offer strategic advantages, it simultaneously raises the stakes for global security, creating new vulnerabilities and ethical dilemmas. The acceleration of military innovation without corresponding international frameworks or agreements risks creating a world where rapid escalation becomes the norm and where misjudgment can have irreversible consequences. Hypersonic missiles, in their speed and unpredictability, are a stark reminder that the 21st century arms race is not simply a contest of firepower, but a contest of foresight, adaptation, and the ability to navigate the volatile intersection of technology, strategy, and human decision-making. While the deployment of hypersonic missiles captures immediate headlines for their speed and destructive capacity, the urgent need for diplomacy becomes an equally critical focus in understanding their impact. Modern warfare is not merely about firepower, it is about the strategic interplay between action, perception, and negotiation. Hypersonic weapons, by compressing the decision-making window, magnify the consequences of every choice made by national leaders. A single misstep, miscalculation, or failure to communicate effectively can escalate a crisis into a broader confrontation with devastating consequences. Diplomacy, therefore, emerges as not just a secondary tool, but an essential mechanism for maintaining stability, preventing misjudgment, and protecting civilian populations from the unintended consequences of technological escalation. The pressure on international actors is immense. When one nation demonstrates a capacity to strike with near impunity, neighboring states and global powers must navigate a landscape where the margin for error has shrunk dramatically. Alliances must be reaffirmed, communication streamlined, and contingency plans carefully aligned to ensure that escalation is managed and misinterpretation is minimized. Every public statement, every behind-the-scenes negotiation, every show of solidarity or restraint becomes part of a delicate choreography in which the stakes could not be higher. Hypersonic weapons do not exist in a vacuum. Their use directly tests the efficacy of diplomatic frameworks and the willingness of states to engage in measured, strategic dialogue. Zelensky's engagement with international partners illustrates the centrality of diplomacy in contemporary conflict by articulating Ukraine's vulnerabilities, its strategic goals, and its call for support. He transforms what might otherwise be a purely military confrontation into a global diplomatic issue. Allies are compelled to respond, not just with material aid or military intelligence, but with political engagement, economic sanctions, and strategic alignment. Diplomacy becomes a force multiplier, amplifying the effect of defensive strategies while reinforcing global norms against unchecked aggression. In this way, human agency and negotiation retain primacy, even in the shadow of weapons that might seem to render traditional decision-making obsolete. The international system itself is under pressure to adapt. Traditional security institutions, treaties, and agreements are being tested by the speed and unpredictability of hypersonic technology. These developments highlight gaps in collective security arrangements and underscore the necessity for creative, proactive diplomatic engagement. The question is no longer simply how to deter attacks, but how to manage relationships, influence adversaries, and craft multilateral responses that reduce risk without appearing weak. Leaders must navigate the tension between deterrence and diplomacy, demonstrating strength while leaving avenues open for negotiation. Hypersonic weapons also elevate the role of public perception in diplomatic strategy. Citizens, analysts, and policymakers observe not only the physical effects of a strike, but the political and strategic reactions that follow. Rapid, transparent, and coordinated diplomatic responses can prevent panic, maintain morale, and reinforce the credibility of international coalitions. Conversely, delayed or inconsistent messaging risks creating uncertainty, emboldening adversaries, and destabilizing alliances. In this context, diplomacy becomes both a shield and a signal, a method of mitigating the psychological impact of technological escalation while communicating resolve to all stakeholders. Finally, the urgent need for diplomacy highlights the interconnectedness of modern security, technology, and human decision-making. Weapons may define the possibilities, but human judgment defines the outcomes. The existence of hypersonic missiles underscores the importance of foresight, dialogue, and negotiation in mitigating risk. Every engagement, from emergency summits to quiet backchannel discussions, serves as a reminder that even the fastest, most advanced weapons cannot replace the necessity of strategic thinking, prudent leadership, and international cooperation. In a world where technological capabilities evolve faster than conventional frameworks, diplomacy remains the cornerstone of survival, influence, and the preservation of stability. In conclusion, the hypersonic strike against Ukraine is not just a news story, it is a wake-up call. It is a demonstration of the speed at which modern conflicts evolve and the urgent need for strategic foresight, international cooperation, and moral clarity. As citizens, scholars, and engaged observers, our responsibility is to understand these dynamics, question simplistic narratives, and demand that our leaders act with prudence and vision. The future of global stability may well depend on our collective awareness today.